I was living in Geneva, and the commander-in-chief of the Finnish Air Force, General Rauno Meriö, was in Jyväskylä in Finland, where we have our Air Force headquarters. And we had 1 hour's interview in the Finnish radio, and there he revealed, 91, that Japanese had already exceeded the speed of light. It's not known generally, still. So the information we usually get is totally wrong.
Let me tell you one other small thing. A retired scientist by the name of David Froning, who is alive and well and living outside of Flagstaff, Arizona today. 15 years ago, David Froning spoke at a conference which I was part of. And Froning graduated or completed his career working for Lockheed Martin, this vast corporation that's got their sticky fingers in so damn many things. David told us at this conference 15 years ago that before he retired, Lockheed Martin had, how the word he is, they had developed and were using hyperluminal flight. And it took some of us a little bit of a side there, and David, hyperluminal flight. Yeah, he said, faster than light. They've had it 40 years. Who has it? Well, he says, I want to say your government, but I can't say that with all honesty because he says it's classified. We've had hyperluminal flight for years.
The smallest one was about 24 feet in diameter at the bottom end of the craft. The medium-sized vehicle was about 60 feet in diameter, and the largest was somewhere between 125 and 130 feet in diameter.
I said, what were they doing? Were they just sitting on the floor? He says, no, they were hovering. There wasn't no landing gear, nothing holding them up, cables, it's just they were hovering. There was a 3-star general that was part of the presentation. When they pulled back the curtains and these three flying saucers revealed to the audience that had been brought there to this hangar, this general got up and he was describing these vehicles. He described them as alien reproduction vehicles, ARV for short. They also had a nickname for the aircraft. They called them flux liners. Now, flux is an electrical term for a high electrical charge. So, high electrical charge liner, a flux liner. And so this was, so he got kind of scared. He stopped talking. And so I said, well, let's have lunch. He was nervous about talking about it on the phone. So I go over there and we start talking. And as he's describing this stuff, he's describing the different features that he had seen. And well, how do you know that? I mean, if you could just look at the outside of the vehicle, how do you know what the inner workings is? He says, well, they had taken some of the panels off the outside so you could see the inside of, what the components looked like. And he said it was remarkably simple. There wasn't that much to it. And I said, you were able to figure out how it worked from that? He said, well, no, they had an easel next to it with a drawing, a cutaway drawing, that showed some of the internal components, how they were arranged oriented to one another. And then they had a little a TV monitor with a tape player below it that was showing this continuous loop of this thing sitting or hovering over like a dry lake bed out in the desert somewhere. And as you would watch the tape, this thing would make went from a hovering position, made these 3 little sort of hops going to the side, and then as the camera followed it, just went straight up and disappeared outside. He was down to nothing in just a matter of a second and a half or so. One of the things that this general had said during the presentation, one of the things that really stood out in Brad's mind was that he said that these vehicles were capable of light speed or better.
One of the talks that I had back in July of 1994 was, of course, the senior commander of U.S. Space Command comes up and he's, of course, very sharp, this is the way it is kind of guy. He says, Docs, I come to Jesus talk for you. And I thought, oh, what is he going to say to us? And he had this real serious look. He says, you're one of our guys now. So you're going to hear stuff, because you're working with these guys working on all these weird projects. These guys are the brightest guys in engineering, cybernetics, physics, space-based weapons, everything. And you're going to get exposed to things. And so you won't hear from somebody else. I'm going to tell you right now, we control every cubic centimeter of space between here and Mars. And I said, what? I said, you mean between here and the moon? He said, no, Mars. We've had a colony on Mars since the early 1980s. And we found evidence of previous civilizations of human life on there going back a long time. We've had an entire city on the moon for mining operations for helium-3. We have entire fleets of space-based vehicles. And we have more advanced sub and above light vehicles that go interstellar.
Yep.
Okay?
Right.
You need to know that.
Yep.
You need to know we have entire rings of space-based platforms around Earth. We have collaboration with advanced civilizations. And if you don't know this stuff, might as well know it now, and if you have questions about anything, ask me, because otherwise, if you're not in the loop, you're going to freak out.
Yep.
Okay, when was this? What year?
July 10th, 1994.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep. Yep.
I have heard astounding things, not only from this colonel, okay, but also probably the highest rank was a retired 3-star general, lieutenant general in the Air Force. And he knew another guy that I was in contact with, and this other guy claims that he worked 7 years on the U.S. anti-gravity program. I have a fraction of what he told me, and I've got it tape recorded. It's true. Whoa. What a sham the space program is. Because there's another space program going on. A secret space program. And that's what I was attempting to find. In fact, you don't have to go too far to find that there is some secret space programs going on, because they had their own shuttles and their own astronaut crews right out here at Vandenberg Air Force Base, unbeknownst to everybody. And they scuttled a $5 billion facility that was housed there at one time. That was back in the 80s. But the kind of space program he was talking about is using a spacecraft that can leave the bounds of our atmosphere and travel to the planet Mars at 0.8 C, 0.8 the speed of light. And I said, how do you know that? I've been there, he said.
Yes, Bill, could you just elaborate a little more on the trips to Mars that you had mentioned earlier?
That this man who told me this, by the way, verified he is an aerospace engineer. I cannot verify that he's also a physicist except by his writings, and I have some of his papers. And he claimed to work shoulder to shoulder with a race of human-like beings just like us. I forgot where he said they were from, if it really matters, but it was these people who were guiding him through the... He wasn't back engineering so much as he was on trying to explain the physics of what the engineers were doing. He was investigating the physics of it with the assistance of these beings, so he claimed. And he worked in underground facilities at Nevada Test Site, Channel 8, Edwards Air Force Base, maybe other places. And when I asked him this question, or I put this question to him, he said that he had been on this craft, had gone to Mars, and I asked him, where did you go? Where did you land? And he said, we went underground on Mars. And there was a base there where they landed. And he would not describe the base, who put it there, or whether it was our base. Nothing. He shut up about that. But in order to just evoke a little bit more information out of him, I asked the question, are there Martians And there was a real pregnant pause before he replied, and he simply said, yes. And I said, and what do they look like? Now get this, he said, like the ancient Egyptians.